Greg Ehrenberg here with Adam Scherer, and thank you to Eric Lindquist for filling in on me on the show yesterday. As you can see, I could change the header here. So here, Eric, now it's me, Eric, me. But thank you to Eric for filling in yesterday. First time we've had a guest on the injury report show. So do us the normal favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and of course, if any kind of news breaks later on the day after we're done with the show, leave a comment below, ask a question, and I will be sure to come back and answer it. And the way that the NBA is going right now, certainly a possibility that could happen, because already, as is Adam and I did the NBA strategy show this morning, and some things have changed pretty dramatically. And one thing that I want to hit on first, right at the top here, Christian Wood was presumed to be out today. It was something the Rockets had said that he was going to miss at least a couple of games. He was unexpectedly upgraded to questionable. Now, the reason this is significant, Sengun was expected to be the chalk of the slate on DraftKings. He was expected to be really popular on FanDuel. If Christian Wood plays, how does that affect Sengun tonight, Adam?
I think it makes him pretty close to unplayable because the salary is increased to $5,500. So when he was $4K or even $4,500, you could make the case that you wanted to play him on the smaller slates, because if he gets to 24 minutes one way or the other, he's going to be good. But at 5,500, you really need those minutes. And so I think it makes it a lot more difficult to get there. The only way I could see going that route is if the ownership just becomes non-existent. Then you hope that he gets some run alongside Christian Wood, which is certainly possible. But if Wood comes back, it's obviously a huge negative for Sengun.
Yeah, and then I think we should talk about the situation where Wood is out, because at least as of this morning, we had Sengun projected for over 50% ownership on DraftKings. FanDuel, he was projected for around 40% ownership. You and I talked about it on the strategy show, but let's go through that same situation in tournaments. If Sengun is going to be over 50% owned on DK, 40% on FanDuel in a situation where Wood is out, how would you be approaching him in tournaments?
Yeah, so I mean, I would really want to get to him in tournaments, but it really comes down to the ownership of other guys in my lineup. You and I talked about it a bit on the strategy show. As of now, I think that there is a lot of low-owned, high upside flyer type plays that I could use that make it so I can get Sengun and still give myself a realistic shot at finishing at the top of the tournament without having to get insanely lucky against a bunch of basically the same team for more or less. So the way it looks right now, I think I could still get to him. He'd look really good. It just comes down to the ownership. If some of those lower owned plays that I want to use as contrarian plays come up, then it makes it even more difficult just because the entire lineup is becoming more popular.
And the next team to hit on here is going to be the Brooklyn Nets. They're dealing with their COVID situation. So Aldridge, Carter, Brown, Bembry, Johnson, Millsap, Harden, all these guys are out today. I don't even think it's worthwhile to talk about Kevin Durant. I'm playing Kevin Durant. You're playing Kevin Durant. Everybody knows to play Kevin Durant in this situation. Where I think things get a little murkier, though, is the value plays on the Nets. We saw David Duke start last game. He played really well. We saw a big game from Kessler Edwards off the bench. But for tonight's slate, we've got Langston Galloway. He's been introduced into the mix, signed a 10-day contract with the Nets. Who are the cheap players from Brooklyn that make the most sense for this slate?
Really, I think it's whoever's getting the least amount of ownership. I think that there's still minutes available for David Duke. There's still minutes for Cam Thomas and Kessler Edwards. But the thing that you really want to keep in mind is that a lot of the last game's rotation was dictated by Kessler Edwards playing really well and also David Duke dealing with foul trouble. Kessler Edwards picked up an extra 5 minutes at the end of the first half. He subbed in very early in the third quarter because Duke picked up another foul. So it's still a very fluid situation. I think there's a tendency when you've only had one game of a similar rotation to just say, well, this is the rotation. Like when you just look at the end results, it's not crazy to say, okay, David Duke's going to play 32 minutes. It's probably a little crazy to say Kessler Edwards is going to play 39. But there's still a lot of volatility in those guys. Now you add Langston Galloway into the mix as well. It's a situation where whoever starts, like if we assume David Duke starts again, he's quote unquote the safest in terms of playing time because he's going to be the first one on the floor. But I really think it's just going to end up being a hot hand situation where whoever's playing the best out of Duke, Thomas, Edwards, and to some extent Galloway end up getting those minutes. You know that the closing lineup is going to consist of Patty Mills. It's going to have Kevin Durant. It's most likely going to have at least one of Blake Griffin or Nick Claxton, if not both. So you're just talking about the last one or two spots going to whoever's playing the best out of Thomas, Duke, Edwards, Galloway.
Yeah, I see it the same way. And don't forget that today's injury report is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. If you guys are new to Yahoo, do yourself a favor, click on the link in the description box below, head on over to Yahoo, make your first deposit, enter a contest, get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Then you get access to all the tools that we have over on Awesemo.com, ownership projections, player rankings, and all that that'll help you win some money playing NBA DFS. All right, a couple more injury report situations to hit on here. The next one is the Philadelphia 76ers. Furkan Korkmaz early in the day, he was listed as questionable, but he has now officially been ruled out. That comes in addition to George Niang being in the COVID protocol. So, Adam, with the Sixers now being a little bit more shorthanded on the wing, how does this impact the rotation?
So last night we saw a ton of minutes for Tyrese Maxey. He played about 42 minutes last night. You don't necessarily get that same level of playing time here, but he is someone that we've seen Doc Rivers rely on to play heavy minutes when the Sixers have been shorthanded at times this year. So I think it's likely he plays a lot of minutes. We got 37 minutes from Tobias Harris. That's likely to repeat itself. One interesting spot, and I know you mentioned it this morning, Matisse Thybulle remained in the starting lineup yesterday. He only played 14 and a half minutes, but if he can avoid foul trouble tonight, yesterday he picked up 3 fouls in the first half, and then it wasn't foul issues in the second half. He just they went on a -14 run to open the half, and he never came back. But if he can stay out of foul trouble, having him on Kevin Durant for as many minutes as he can be on the floor makes a lot of sense from the Sixers' point of view. So you could certainly see Thibault approach 30 minutes or so at $3,100.
Yeah, and the final injury situation to hit on, it is the New York Knicks also dealing with COVID. Kevin Knox, Obi Toppin, RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes, they are all out. Of those names, RJ Barrett is the only one that's really a big name, but now we've got a pretty condensed Knicks rotation. That in addition to that, we've seen Tom Thibodeau kind of make an effort to try to condense it. So we could see an 8-9-man rotation for the Knicks today, very similar to what we got out of the Nets the other day. Who are the value plays that stand out the most in this situation?
Yeah, and one other thing that just minor thing to keep an eye on, Lucas Samanic and Jericho Sims are both listed as out with the G League. That's a status that, at times this year we've seen change. But if those two do remain out, then it just can make you even more confident in this Knicks rotation. And I think the Knicks rotation is really, really interesting to break down, because when you look at their last game, they were shorthanded just like they are today, but they still had Kevin Knox. It was a game against Golden State where they closed with a small lineup with Julius Randle at the 5. That's not something they typically do, and I really don't think that it's going to be easy for them to do it tonight, because you're taking Knox's 20 minutes out. So basically what happened in that game was, if they had played bigger, you would have gotten not much playing time for Miles McBride. But they played smaller, so you got 20 minutes from McBride. It's likely McBride keeps those 20 minutes or so, but it's also likely that instead of combining for about 38 minutes, that Noel and Robinson combined for 48. So 10 of the 20 minutes that Knox played likely to go to those guys makes them look pretty appealing as low owned tournament options, as long as the ownership is going to be low. And then you still have 10 minutes available for what I expect to mostly be Evan Fournier and Emmanuel Quickly. In the last game, Burks played 39 minutes, Rose played 34, Randall played 37. You can always add, a minute or two to any of those, but they pretty much got theirs. It was Fournier at 29 minutes and Quickly at 22 that came in a little bit less than you would expect them to be in a lot of games. So I think it's likely that you see those remaining 10 minutes pretty much split between those two.
Yeah, but we certainly have a lot of ever-changing NBA injury news, which is all the more reason you guys should be watching this video every day, liking it, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and just to reiterate what I said before, if anything changes on the NBA injury report, Christian Wood gets ruled in, gets ruled out later, leave a question in the comment section later. I'll come back and answer it. Other than that, guys, good luck tonight, and hopefully no late scratch.